Welcome. Tonight we are going to have a dialogue about restoring trust because this week is the Peace Week. There'll be different celebrations all over Holland and talks and discussions on how we can promote peace and how we can bring about a more peaceful society. So we've put together a presentation, and part of this is also going to be a dialogue part. Next. So we've called this Restoring Trust towards a more peaceful and equitable world. Next. Why is trust such an important component of peace? Without trust, peace is impossible. Its absence makes it harder to listen to another, to allow them to express their opinion, to reach a compromise, to promote communication between multiple parties holding a range of diverse opinions. Trust is so valuable to build between us all if we really want to safeguard peace. This must be nurtured and actively worked on. We can all start by building trust within our own circles. Next. The most common definition of trust typically includes the following elements: willingness of one person or group to depend on the actions of another person or group, believing that someone else is honest or that something will go well. Next. Giving or having trust means having the conviction that the other person can make the right choices, even if they are different than you would like. To trust that the other person informs you at the right times. To be convinced that the other person can meet their own needs. Next. Learning to give and receive confidence and trust in balance means personal growth on the one hand, but also has direct meaning within teams, organizations, and for managers. Next. Trust has mainly to do with being familiar with. When the child sees that he can cycle, he has the confidence that he will not fall. When we can drive and we are familiar with the traffic, then we feel safe. We're confident. We trust ourselves. Next. I have some quotes. Faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase. It's from Martin Luther King. Next. This is an excerpt from The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey Jr. There is one thing in common in all individuals, relationships, teams, families, organizations, nations, economies, and civilizations around the world. One thing that, if taken away, destroys the strongest governments, the most successful companies, the most prosperous economies, the most influential leadership, the best friendship, the strongest character, and the deepest love. On the other hand, if it is developed and strengthened, that ending has the ability to create unprecedented successes and prosperity in every dimension of life. And yet it is the least understood, most ignored, and the most underestimated opportunity of the present time. That one thing is trust. Next. On the day we can fully trust each other, there will be peace on earth. L. Ron Hubbard. Next. So we now come to the dialogue part, and the rules are: please speak from personal experience. I feel instead of one says. Treat each other with respect and kindness. Postpone your judgment and listen to the other person. Please be aware of the allotted time and keep it short and sweet because we're on Zoom. Thank you. Next. The first question, and I'll ask that of Duncan, please. Can you share a personal experience where you have experienced trust in your life? How did you feel? Duncan.
Thank you, Carola, and thank you also for the presentation, and very enlightening. And I really liked the way you have emphasized the importance of trust for building peace. Now, coming to your question, yes, indeed, I do have an experience, personal experience, where I have experienced trust in my life. There are many, but this one comes vividly to mind. It happened many, many years ago when, as a student, I traveled to Kenya for a field research trip. But I also wanted to go further to Tanzania. So I had gotten the address of my contact person in Tanzania, and I had to travel by bus. And I arrived at the border of Tanzania with Kenya very late at night, and it was all dark, and there was a shortage of power, so it was very dark. There was no electricity, and I had to cross the border. It was a bridge by foot, crossing the border to go into Tanzania and to meet the person there where I at the other side where I wanted to stay. Of course, the bus had a lot of delay, so the person, though I didn't know the person, had come several times to meet me, but I did not show up because of the late arrival of the bus. And I didn't know where to go and how to proceed. And then a few people, they came to me, and I explained to them that I had to meet a person. I don't know who the person was. He was going to come and meet me. I only had a name, but I had never met that person. And I was a little bit scared because I didn't know if I could trust these people. But in the end, I decided, well, there's nothing else I can do but to trust and to entrust myself to these people who were accompanying me across the border into Tanzania to meet with a person I had never met before. And to make a long story short, it was based on this trusting these people that were strangers to me, that I eventually arrived where I had to be. And how did it make me feel? It made me feel blessed. It made me feel appreciative, And I was very happy that I was able to overcome my suspicion in the beginning, and to trust myself to these strangers who accompanied me across the border into Tanzania to meet with a person I had never known before. And so that was a very fundamental experience about trust in my life.
Oh, thank you, Duncan. Hanamitra, would you like to share your answer on this question?
Yes, I will let myself shown. I think it's very difficult when it comes to trust in your life, because most of the time it is like this, that we are not able to trust people, because we think we don't know for sure, you know, how they are, and what is their opinion. So a personal experience about trust is, I think I have to find that in a spiritual way. I think that's, for me, I can find trust there. If it comes to people, you never know if you can trust people or not. So it is, for me, it is a little bit difficult to say I can do it like this. I always, how we say it, I always, when I encounter people, when I come to meet them, my heart's always open, because I want to trust them, but sometimes it is not working. It's like that. So I think that is it's my personal experience, Carola. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanamitra. Petra, would you like to share an experience on this question?
Yeah, I have. I can really relate it to diving, because we go scuba diving a lot, and sometimes you get paired with someone you don't know. So it's just a stranger that you have to go diving with, and you have to trust that that person does know what he's doing. And then if something goes wrong, he will be able to rescue you, basically. And we had to go. We were diving, and then there was this cave entrance, and he had been in that cave before, but I hadn't. And we were with a group, so it was a bit better. But then I got a bit scared, because I've never been cave diving. It was only a small cave, but still, it was quite scary. And then basically underwater, he kind of signed like, yeah, trust me with it. And at first I was a bit hesitant, but then I did go, and it was the most amazing thing ever. So I was really glad I went. But yeah, before you can, there's always a weird moment of, should I do this, before you trust someone that you don't know. But if you do, something amazing can happen from it, I think. And that's what happened with the dive.
Thanks, Petra. Morgana, do you have an experience you wish to share?
Right now?
Yes.
I have the perfect trust in the people around me, but sometimes it's quite difficult to actually hand over certain jobs and what have you, and actually realize that you can depend on people. Like today, although we'd practiced this, at the last minute things go wrong, and I'm racing around now trying to find all the links and what have you. So on the one hand, I have it daily. And I think that the biggest problem is that when you really depend on somebody, and then you find out they've said yes, but actually do no, that can be really heartbreaking, because I say heartbreaking because it means that things you've actually planned are not executed. So it's you put a lot of heart and passion into something. So I think today, one of the things I really experience a lot is that if I ask somebody or share something with someone, I trust that they will also treat it with the respect, and also show me respect. So if somebody says they're going to do something, and then afterwards I find out that they haven't, then I find it very disrespectful, because they're not honoring. I would say, you know, within my own spiritual tradition, we take an oath. We take an oath. And part of that oath is that you promise to, you know, do exactly what you've, especially in magical work. Of course, you have to be extremely clear about how and what you're going to be doing. And if you go against your promise or your oath and are oath breaking, then it can have real consequences I would say, in the spiritual world. Because I think what people don't realize is when you break a promise, when you break trust, then it has real reverberations in the spiritual world. And I think a lot of people don't actually realize how important that is. If we can't trust our politicians, how are we going to, you know, you're dealing with people's lives. So to me, I experience this every day. It's not just something I have one instance, but I have this every day. And if I feel that I cannot trust somebody, whether it's a politician, or whether it's a friend, or it's a teacher, or somebody on Facebook or social media, then I feel they're actually being very disrespectful to me as a friend. So that's how I feel. I feel great heartbreak and disappointment when somebody proves to be untrustworthy.
Thank you, Morgana. Mariana, would you like to share an experience where
Yes.
you have experienced trust in your life?
Yes, but first of all, I have to admit that my English is not so perfect as I would that it was. So sorry for that.
It's okay.
My experience of trust was also during scuba diving. I'm afraid of water. I am not able to swim, but yet I went scuba diving.
Wow.
And it was my friend who told me, trust me, I will go with you. And we went the first time in a very cold water in the north of Holland, hand in hand, underwater. And I remember that it was like a victory of my fear, but also a moment of full love because I could trust my friend. After that, I have made more than 200 dives, and I went 40 meter in like depth, so it went well, but I still am not able to swim.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marianne. That gives me hope. Well, I would like to share an experience I had many, many years ago. I was in San Francisco and I was in a relationship with the father of my daughter, which was very difficult, let's put it that way. But we got taken in by the Reverend Kitling, who was this older man. I mean, he probably was in his 70s. He'd never known a white person in his life. So he took me and my friend who was from Antilles in. And to do that showed an incredible amount of trust. It was an amazing experience for me when I found out that he had never spoken to a white woman. He had his wife had been a cook down in the deep South. He had a very large family. He was eccentric. He typical American with a gun, you know. On Mondays he'd pull out his gun and say, Blue Monday, nobody's coming in here. He knew his Bible. He was illiterate. He couldn't read, but he would follow the words in his Bible. But what amazed me, and it stayed with me my whole life, because I was only about 19 when this happened, was that he was telling me about that we're all one, that all these colors and we're all together. And he gives me a lecture on that, where he has never been in a position where he's been able to interact with white people. I was the first in his life. And that was an incredible feeling of trust that he had given me, that I was in his home, that he had invited us to stay, and that we became part of his family. So that was an amazing experience. It made me feel humble, and it still makes me feel humble with everything that's going on in the US, to know that I was shown that amount of hospitality by somebody who really had nothing, basically. Yeah. Okay, we go to the next question. Morgana? All right. The next question is, how can we restore trust? What would change if we could show more trust towards others in daily life? Let me start with Hanamitra. Hanamitra.
Yeah. What would change? I think it would be more respect towards each other. If you have more trust, it would be more respect. But in daily life, a lot of people encounters no respect, so that's why they are not trusting other people. And I think if we can restore that, if we can restore respect towards each other, then I think it will change. It will change how you are looking to another person, and it will give. They will think the person is reliable, is trustworthy, because he is not hurting you, or he or she is good for you. Then it gives trust. And I think it will take a long time before we reach that part in society, because this society is how we see it. It is really not trustworthy, if you know what I mean. Look at the politics, what's happening there nowadays in our country. So it's really something, a tough thing. But I hope if we respect each other, Carola, then it will be good to build trust. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Hanamitra. Duncan.
Thank you, Carola. Before I answer the question, I was trying to get your attention to Petra's friend. I don't know if she wants to also be part of the conversation. I see her there. So I just wanted to ask you if you wanted to ask her to also answer the question, if she likes.
Yes, I was just going to tell her that she can answer this question.
What is her name?
Sophia.
Oh, Sophia. I will add you to the list, Sophia.
Thank you, Duncan.
So, Duncan, how can we restore trust?
Yes, it's by taking a risk. And what do I mean by that? By taking a risk, I mean by that you need to make yourself dependent on someone else. But perhaps that is a too big step, too much, a step too big. So what I actually mean is that I answering this question from the premise that there are many kind people in the world. A lot of people are kind. That's the premise, and I really believe that. I'm convinced of that. But we don't realize that because we don't know each other.
Yeah.
And when we see someone, we either ignore the person or we have an opinion about a person, but we refrain from engaging with that person. And I think that when we meet people we don't know and we engage with them, we get to know them, we come to realize how kind they can be.
Mm.
And to make yourself dependent on someone is a risk. And I think you need to have a lot of self-confidence and faith in yourself and allowing yourself to be dependent on someone else. What I mean by that, for example, accepting help from someone else you don't know.
Mm.
So by doing that, you kind of acknowledge that other person as a human being, and you start to build a relationship. And by building a relationship, the trust grows and you get to know the person. And I think that if that continues to happen on a daily basis, what will change is that fear will be reduced.
Mm.
Because a lot of mistrust, I think, is based on fear.
Mm.
We are feared because of unfortunate experiences in the past. So we have fear to allow ourselves to be helped by someone else. We have that fear. Just one example, which I myself had. I was somewhere one day, and a person stopped and said, "Would you do you want a lift?" And I was very reluctant and hesitant, and he was kind of insisting. But then I said, "Well, why not try it? Let's try it." So I had to overcome my fear. And that person, I didn't know, he gave me a lift and said, where do you have to go? And I said, I have to go there. And so he out of kindness, he just put me where I had to be. He was very kind. And so I had to overcome my own fear and make myself dependent on that stranger, that person I didn't know, and build a relationship with him. And by doing that, I think, but I don't want to be naive. I know that there are a lot, there are also, just like how there are many kind people, there are also people with bad intentions. So you have to be careful. But I think basically a lot of people are kind, and it's a risk to, that's why I said it's a risk to make yourself dependent on someone else. But I think that very often we can experience that relationships are established by taking that risk. It's just like having a blind date. It's also a risk. But by having a blind date, you can start a relationship with someone else.
Yeah. Thank you, Duncan. Morgana, how can we restore trust? And what would change?
Yeah, it's a question I've been asking myself a lot recently. How can we actually restore trust? First of all, it's I think you have to first have some kind of dialogue with the people that you feel have hurt you or caused damage to either your reputation or for, in a work situation, of course, that can be really dangerous. I find it really difficult to start the dialogue, especially, I work with a lot of volunteers. And what you often see with volunteers, it's really difficult because you can't sort of say, well, you've breached confidence or you're fired. So I work with a lot of volunteers. So I always have to find a way of trying to create an atmosphere in which that dialogue can also take place. It can actually give feedback. And I think, as you just pointed out in the, it's always easier if you go into that kind of dialogue and actually start with the I form and not say, you know what I mean? It's always difficult. It's always difficult when you're giving people feedback or to actually explain or actually hint how you actually feel. I felt very hurt when I realized that you had not done, all the rest of it. And it's very difficult because on the one hand, we're trying to be business-like, we're trying to be, but I find sometimes in the end, it's much better to be honest and actually try to help people to understand why you've been hurt.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you can spend hours finding excuses and you don't actually get to the real heart of the matter. And most of the time, I think people feel hurt that something has not happened or that the trust has been lost. So I think if we can try to get that dialogue going and be honest with each other, but that takes a lot of trust as well. So it's a real practice. But I think the clue is that people are willing and also willing to listen. And that's why I think these dialogue, these workshops you're giving are so good, because part of what you're doing now is actually teaching us how to go into dialogue with somebody who has hurt us, or so whether it's a work colleague or a relationship. I think these actual, if you want to call them webinars or whatever you want to call them, Carola, I think are extremely important. So I would say, how do we start, actually teaching others how to do this? Because once we get the hang of it, then we're actually more equipped to deal with the situations. And rather than being very emotional about something and saying something we don't actually, or we may regret later, I think it's quite good to sort of say, ask yourself these questions and how can we, in fact, start the dialogue.
Absolutely. Thank you, Morgana. Sophia.
Thank you. Well, to be honest, I don't have that much to add. When Duncan was mentioning being, I was translating it, being vulnerable towards others, believing the good in people. I think that's also very important, a very important step towards feeling trustful towards others, but also towards yourself. When I also look at my travels, it's, I don't know, in a way also just letting be, or being and letting go, just not overthinking or not getting too much in your head. Actually the essence was believing in the good of people and making yourself vulnerable. I think also what Morgana was mentioning, opening dialogue by communicating clearly, openly, transparent. Although I must say, I think that within this world, it's rather difficult. Even though we have all these, all the different types of technologies, it's still, I think, difficult. And I think that comes back again to being vulnerable and open and trusting in the good of people, trusting that well, Duncan, you mentioned that there are also people with bad intentions, but also there, I believe that there's a reason why, also I think compassion would be then same line. Even though that there might be people that have bad intentions, I always try to wonder what's behind it and why, or what is going on with that person. So I think being compassionate, open, entering the dialogue are important keywords here. Yeah.
Thank you, Sophia. Great. Marianne, how can we restore trust?
Now, yesterday I had a long conversation with someone who is against vaccination. And although my body was no, like that, I listened to him. I took him serious, and I tried to understand why he is so against this vaccination, and all the stories behind, like. And I think that is very important, that we try to listen to the other, what her or his feelings are, and then without judging, but like in a neutral way, and then looking and of searching for common ground. If one has common ground, then you have already one little step to creating trust.
Yes.
And I think it's also very important to give something from you, something, not a secret, but some really, a feeling or a thought that is very private. If you give that, then you probably will get something like the same sort back. And because you gave trust by telling something that is very secret. Something like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Petra, how can we restore trust?
Yeah, I find it quite hard to follow all of this now. Yeah, I do agree with everything that has been said. And also, for me, it's more about honesty, because even if you think, just being honest with everyone. So if you have a stranger that's honest with you, and if you don't want to hear that truth, I would trust him more than I don't know, a friend that doesn't tell you the truth, or that doesn't, because then that break of trust is even worse, I think, than a stranger. But so I think honesty is really, really a big factor in it. And also, like everyone else said, not to lose the belief that people are good in a way, because even if you do get burned, if they I had a story like that where someone was asking for money, a couple in Brussels, and I gave them €5, and then someone behind me was like, oh, they did this all the time, like why did you believe their story? And I think, like, but that says more about them than me trusting them, because what if one day someone does come that does need that €5, and because of all this you don't trust people anymore? I think that's worse than so I think that's it.
Oh, thank you, Petra. Well, when we were going in the beginning about, with the definitions, there was one, and it was about confidence and feeling familiar with things. And that really resonated with me, because how do you do that if you come to another country where things are unfamiliar, where you're not a part of the culture? It's not your culture. I've had this my whole life, basically. But once I started to become more familiar, and really this took me many, many years. I should think mostly since I've retired, actually, because I have time now to become familiar with what's going on and my neighborhood and the people around me. I've become involved in groups around me, so I've become familiar, and then I find that my trust is always being tested. But because I understand, I can see where people are coming from. And it's not whether somebody's right or wrong, it's how they view their lives. So that means that I can build up some trust in them. I know what I can rely on them for. You can't rely on somebody for something that they can never give. And I think that's where disappointment comes in with trust, is if you think this person is capable of something that they're just not capable of, you're having unrealistic expectations. So, but maybe they are trustworthy in other areas. So it's all to do with that familiarity of getting to know somebody. Then you know, what you can trust them with and how you can rely on them. So so I would say for me is that familiarity, that having a dialogue of getting to know somebody and being, as you said, Marianne, being neutral. You know, I don't have to agree with everything that everybody says. I can have my opinion and they can have their opinion, and you can be neutral about it because you have something else that you have to do. that is important, and then you can find familiar ground on this one thing that you want to get accomplished. And that can't be done just by Zooming each other and doing a WhatsApp. That requires sitting down in front of somebody. And I think that is what we have to get back to in society, is sitting down and talking with each other and getting to know each other again. Okay, Morgana, next question. Okay, how could you personally show more trust for someone else in your daily life? And I'd like you to look at a person. You don't have to mention by name or a situation or something that is close to you. What do you feel that you could do to show more trust? Marianne, let's start with you. Marianne?
Carola,
Yeah.
she's not responding. I think she's dropped out.
Oh, maybe she's gone somewhere.
Yeah. Or
Shortly.
maybe the internet connection's not too good, but she's not available at the moment.
Okay, so Duncan.
That's a very difficult question.
I'm not
How
going
could you
here to make it
personally-
easy. Yeah.
How could you personally show more trust for someone else in your daily life? How do I do that? You know, I have to relate to you that the opposite is what when I was growing up until my early 20s, I found it very, very annoying and disturbing to notice that something I said that was not trusted. So that's the other side of the question. I had it was very troubling. It would haunt me for days if ever I experience a slight feeling that somebody does not trust what I say or what I do. So, but now at the other side, how can I show? So certainly it's a very relevant question, because obviously I have thought about this question because I wanted to be trusted.
Right.
To be honest with you, there's not one specific thing that I do. I just try to be myself, showing that I accept people as they are, or at least try to do that, and hoping that by doing that, trust will be built, and allowing somebody else to get to know me and to see the kind of person I am creates this space, this space for winning their trust.
Right.
And I think that's the best thing you could do, is try to be yourself, and also letting somebody into your life and letting somebody getting to know you.
Absolutely. Lovely, Duncan. Thank you. Hanamitra.
I was also puzzling about this answer. Let me refill myself. Yes, I think what I should do, what I would do, I would first go in prayer to ask for help, because I think it's very difficult, and if I got this spiritual connection, then I am able to approach the other person with love in my heart. And then, because there is love and I'm not afraid he will hurt me, then it will come. It will be more. I will have more trust for this person, like that. But I need prayer first for that. Yes.
Okay,
Yes. It's like
thank
that.
you.
You're welcome.
Morgana. How could you?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because both Duncan and Hannah-Mitra have pointed out very, very valid points. I think the last one that Hannah-Mitra was talking about, again, the spiritual component. We also do once a month, once a moon, when the moon is full, and it happens to be full moon at the moment, or tomorrow anyway. And so we have at the full moon, we always have this, what we call drawing down the moon, and ask the moon god or the moon goddess for advice. And I was just thinking that part of that conversation is often, how do I do things in my life? What kind of advice? And then you have certain things, especially relationship problems, where you think, how can I handle this a little bit better? So I'm glad that Hannah-Mitra reminds us again of this spiritual component, because trust is, do you know where the word trust comes from? Vertrouwen. It has everything to do with geloof, geloven, believing. And apparently this word believing also has a very strong connection with love, liefde. And it was just some time ago when I was doing some, actually on this whole presentation with Nehelenia, one of the goddesses of the Netherlands, and came across certain words. And again, looking at Dutch and English, because of course they have the same family. And these words, geloven and belief, have everything to do with love. So I think our ancestors knew that if you were able to love and trust, and we have this word liege and lief, love and loyalty. So all these are based very much on the idea of friendship, of being able to actually share love and respect. So today, I think if I was personally trying to show more trust, I would come back to this idea of, as friends, but even as colleagues, that we have this respect, but also this friendship, and the love we have, whether it's for our work or whether it's for, again, our tradition, our spiritual traditions. So showing more trust. I think, again, as Duncan's also pointed out, you would actually open your heart, even if sometimes, and I think this is the whole point, that even if you've been hurt in the past, especially in relationships, I often say it's not the fact that somebody's gone off with somebody else. Usually the hurt comes when you can't trust that person anymore. So to restore trust is really incredibly difficult. But I always have to go back to love, and how can we restore that respect, but also using our powers of love, and perhaps a good doses of forgiveness as well.
Yeah.
But it is difficult. It is difficult once you have lost trust in somebody to actually restore it. I think that's probably more difficult than actually showing more trust with somebody else in your daily life, because of the emotions involved. So I sometimes say, remind people the kind of opposite of love, of course, is hate. So it's very, very difficult when somebody's really hurt us, and our first emotion is moving towards hate. So how do we restore trust in somebody who's really, really hurt us? I think that's probably the most difficult in the world. And most people will say, well, it is very difficult to, once you've lost trust in somebody, to actually restore trust. And I think that we see this in war situations. Yeah. How can we move towards peace, reconciliation by restoring trust. And I think it's an extremely good theme for this year's Peace Week, because we're still living in a world where there is a lot of war. I cannot understand why people, hurt each other. And so much, when you see the propaganda, again, this is also, a lot to do with trust as well. Do we trust our politicians?
Yes, Morgana, we're keeping it personal though, huh?
Oh yes, okay, yeah. So do I trust my politicians? And of course, in the Netherlands,
how could you personally show more trust for someone else in your daily life?
Yes, yeah. Again, I think it's trying to go back to this idea of love, and how can we restore that connection?
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you, Morgana. Petra.
I think maybe it's also about telling people you trust them, because if I also come back to what Morgana said, if you lost trust in someone, but then that person is really trying to get your trust back, they also feel very insecure, probably, because if they did something, they're like, oh, will she ever trust me again? But also perhaps starting by saying it out loud, like, I trust you. In certain situations, that could also just work, maybe. Just showing it is very hard, but if you, whatever situation you're in, if someone's insecure about something, if you just tell them, I trust you.
Yeah.
I think that could do a lot.
Very good point, Petra. But anybody who's had children has had to go through that many times. Yeah. Sophia.
I think for me personally also it would be not giving into fear and anxiety, and I think the underlying aspect there is daring to ask for help, or being, well, as Anthony before also mentioned, daring to be dependent on another. So daring to ask for help. So basically you're trusting the other. So yeah, for me it would be then asking for help. When it's like very difficult to ask for help, or when fear of the other person that he or she might hurt you, not giving into that, but coming from, as Morgana mentioned, coming from a place of love. So embodying the light within you, and from that place, approaching the other instead of, actually fear comes mostly, not only from the body, but also the thoughts from there come from your mind. It's not really giving into that, but embodying the light. Yeah.
Thank you. Mariana, you back? Okay. So I will give my my answer to this.
Oh, Carola.
Yes.
I think Morgana is saying that we're running out of time.
Yes.
Sure.
Well, we can end on this question, actually, but I would like to say my thing. So for me, Morgana said it to show love, and then other people said it as well, is not to give in to your fears, and to try and put what you want there in your life. So if you put fear of being hurt and fear of this, we know that happens, and it's happened in my life a lot as well, but I'm trying, and it's an effort, it's not easy, but to try and put positive things there, because I've noticed if I put positive things there, I attract positive things. And if I put negative things there, they appear in my life. So I would say for myself, to show, to be there for somebody, to show that you see them, to look them in the eye, and to recognize them as a person, as an individual, I think is a first step for me always. Okay, next, Morgana. I don't think there's any more questions now, though. No, we're at the closing. So if anybody has a favorite quote that they would like to share or something about the dialogue, how long do we have, Morgana?
We're 1 minute.
1 minute?
Yes, yes. 1 minute to the hour. So that's why I was just saying, I think you didn't realize you were running out of time. So
I can't. I've run this the whole time without seeing anybody. I would like to read a little something then, because everybody's touched on it.
Yeah.
It's from The Way to Happiness, and it's be worthy of trust. Unless one can have confidence in the reliability of those about one, he himself is at risk. When those he counts upon let him down, his own life can become disordered, and even his own survival can be put at risk. Mutual trust is the firmest building block in human relationships. Without it, the whole structure comes down. Trustworthiness is a highly esteemed commodity. When one has it, one is considered valuable. When one has lost it, one may be considered worthless. One should get others around one to demonstrate it and earn it. They will become much more valuable to themselves and others thereby. So we've talked about ourselves a lot. I just thought that's something that we can do, is we can ask people to be trustworthy and to keep their word once given, and to do what they say that they're doing. So maybe that's a nice place to start. Does anybody else have anything?
Well, I'm not sure whether I think if you think about it deeply in a way, I think that the quote would connect to peace and trustworthiness. It's from I think it's Heraclitus. I hope I pronounced correctly. It's he says that no man steps into the same river twice, for he is not the same man, nor is it the same river.
Yeah.
So that everything is ever flowing, and also to that extent, I would say, well, I think you can link into not hold on to fear, anxiety, grudges, etc., but really to trust in the flow of life and the flow of everything. I would say, yeah.
Beautiful, Petra. Very nice quote.
That's Sophia.
Oh, Sophia, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I think we're going to end off at this point. Thank you very much for participating in the dialogue. And it's given us all a lot of stuff to think about, I think, for the coming Peace Week. Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, of course, Carola. I think it's really good when you can see things. As when I was making the presentation for you, it was really good to just read it again and again and remind yourself of the sort of some things we just take for granted, you know, and we always think we're going to be clear to people when then they hear something different that we're actually saying.
Yeah,
and
have
that's
to be
really
very alert to that.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I was meaning when I say you really have to be there in front of that person, because only then you can see, have they got what my intention was? That is really hard over a WhatsApp and an email, or even a Zoom, is to really see that what you have said has come over to that person and they can see what you mean. And I think that's all something, we all have to be aware of, because we can judge somebody just because their attention is scattered and they're not really listening, and they go, and we take it personally. Well, they just weren't there. So it's very important that when you are with somebody, that you're there for them at that moment, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Since this is the beginning of International Peace Day, Peace Week, I'd like to ask Duncan now to round our meeting off, and perhaps you can give us a little bit of hope for the future, and certainly this week, Duncan, as we'll be listening to different, certainly from URI, there are different events going on this week. So let's hope we can all join together. I've shared this particular hour with our URI friends throughout the world, because some people, of course, it's very early, so they will hopefully be watching the live streaming. So Duncan, I'd like to ask you now to close our hour with perhaps a word of hope that we can trust in the future.
Yes, of course, a word of hope. Something happened 800 years ago, and what happened 800 years ago still resonates till the day of today. And it's concerned the meeting of St. Francis with the Sultan of Egypt, al-Maliki. And although it happened 800 years ago, it's still relevant for today, and a lot of people are inspired by that event and try to build relationship across their religiosity or their philosophy of life. That's why I want to close with this prayer from St. Francis, and it reads, it's like it goes like this: Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it's in giving that we receive, and it's in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Duncan. Thank you.
Thank you too. So I'd like to draw this meeting to a close and wish everybody a wonderful International Peace Week. We'll be continuing the week until the 26th of September. So blessings to you all, and let's all hope that we can trust each other and also enjoy all the good gifts of the world and the earth. Thank you very much. Good
You're
night.
most
Bye.
welcome. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.